Beneath a stretch of forbidden ocean, untouched by time and untouched by man, lies an island no one truly leaves. For centuries, maps marked it with silence. Ships turned away, satellites glitched, and those who dared step ashore were never seen again. But it wasn't violence that kept the world away. It was something older, something deeper, something that remembers us. Though we forgot it long ago, this is not a legend. It is a warning, a diary burned at the edges, a voice from the deep that whispers in ancient tongues, a tribe that never aged, and a gate carved in obsidian, sealed not to keep us out, but to keep something in. What waits beneath North Sentinel Island has already begun to wake, and now so have you. Let the story begin. In the dim hum of an aging apartment on the outskirts of Kolkata, a man named Harish Banerjee sat hunched over a flickering screen. Retired now, forgotten mostly, he had once served as a senior satellite imagery analyst for the Indian Space Research Organization. His days now pass in solitude, watering dying houseplants, replaying the past on dusty VHS tapes, and occasionally scanning open-source satellite feeds as a habit he could never quite shake. It was late, the kind of night where the skies seem to press against the earth and the air holds its breath. Harish was looking at an outdated surveillance satellite that still fed him low-resolution data from across the Indian Ocean. It was a hobby, nothing more, until something moved. North Sentinel Island. He almost didn't notice it. A shift in the canopy. Too smooth, too deliberate. Not wind, not weather, something aware. He leaned forward. The island, one of the last untouched places on Earth, was declared off-limits decades ago. No one went there. No one came out. It was a speck of untouched green framed by blood-soaked coral reefs and a reputation older than colonial maps. A place governments agreed to ignore. But Harish had seen something move, a ripple in the jungle that didn't follow natural rhythm. He rewound, played it again. The movement was subtle, like a curtain parting briefly to reveal a face at a window. It wasn't just movement, it was observation. He stared for hours, consumed by what he couldn't explain. There were no paths, no fires, no fishing boats, no smoke. But someone had looked up at the sky, at the satellite, as though it knew it was being watched. The next day, he reached out to an old contact in the Navy, Admiral Amir Shah, long retired, older still, but once a man with reach in the shadows of Indian intelligence. Harish showed him the footage, hesitantly. The Admiral said nothing, just stared. Then he made a call. What happened next should have stayed classified. 2 days after Harish raised the alert, a reconnaissance drone from an Indian naval base took off under false pretense, listed as weather research. It flew high, barely skimming detection protocols, circling Forbidden Island twice before returning. The footage was reviewed by a restricted team. What they saw confirmed Harish's fears. Movement, coordinated, intentional, but not human, or rather, not fully. In one frame, barely clear, was a figure, standing, still, unclothed but marked from head to toe with patterns like ink carved into skin. Its head tilted up, facing the drone, eyes locked onto the camera as if it could see beyond the lens. Its eyes were pitch black. Back in Kolkata, Harish could feel it now. A chill that slipped into his room like fog through an open window. The island had always been a mystery. First noted in British colonial records as inhabited by savages who resist the sun, it was avoided even by pirates. Traders whispered of a curse. Locals spoke of a hunger in the jungle. And the Andamanese archipelago, rich in myth and memory, had many names for it, most of which translated simply to do not disturb. And yet, Harish had disturbed it. A week passed in silence until the Navy called him back, not for more footage, for a transmission. It had come 3 days after the drone flight. A scrambled burst of noise intercepted by a naval listening post in the Bay of Bengal. What made it impossible was where it had originated. Somewhere on North Sentinel, there were no transmitters on the island, no radios, no technology, and yet the signal bore a frequency not used since Cold War espionage. After decrypting the static, the message revealed just one word, Return. Harish's breath stopped in his throat. The word had been sent not from him, but to him. The island was not just watching. It was speaking. He tried to sleep that night, but found no peace. Shadows on the wall moved when he blinked. Whispers stirred behind the walls. His dreams were flooded with water, warm, thick, and endless. A jungle canopy above him, eyes all around, and a voice in his ear, echoing not through sound but memory. Return. 2 weeks later, Harish vanished. His apartment was found locked from the inside, food uneaten, computer wiped. No signs of struggle, no signs of departure. But in his chair, carefully placed, was a satellite photo printed and circled in red ink. A small glade at the center of North Sentinel Island, where something waited. The story should have ended there, but it didn't. A young investigative journalist named Anya Desai stumbled upon Harish's case during a piece she was writing on missing scientists in India. She chased whispers to the halls of closed government offices, met with paranoid ex-officers, and followed Harish's trail to an old storage unit filled with journals, photos, and fragments of mind unraveling. She learned of the movement on the island, of the intercepted message, of the black-eyed figure, and of an ancient legend buried in forgotten texts. She dug deeper, into maritime logs, ancient Tamil scrolls, even Mesopotamian myth, and what she found chilled her. References to an island that watches, a land where the trees hear names, and those who remember the first skies still walk. Some called it the eye of the sea, others the final gate, and always, always the warning, leave it alone. But we never do we? Anya knew she had to go. She faked credentials, bribed a coastal ranger, and joined a team of environmental researchers surveying coral bleaching in the Andaman waters. She wasn't there for reefs. She was there for the island. From afar, North Sentinel looked innocent. A lush green smear surrounded by a ring of shallow, jagged reef. But the closer they got, the heavier the air became. Birds no longer sang. The water turned darker, almost oily. The boat's compass spun. The GPS blinked in no fix. They stopped 2 kilometers from shore. The island stared back, a jungle with no beginning, no end, and in that silence, she heard it. Not with ears, but deep in the space behind her eyes. Return. The team left that evening, but not Anya. That night, under a moon that seemed too low, she took a dinghy and paddled toward the shore. Alone, she never stepped onto the sand, because something stepped into the water to meet her, not with anger, not with threat, but with sorrow. She saw him, or it, clearly, black eyes, marked skin, thin, long limbs, and in its hand, a carved relic, shaped like a star, etched with languages that had no alphabet. It didn't speak. It didn't blink. It only held out the relic and placed it on the edge of her boat. Then it turned and walked into water until it disappeared beneath the black tide. Anya returned shaking, sobbing, unable to speak. The team found her the next morning, shivering in her bunk, the relic wrapped in a torn page from Harish's journal. She never spoke again, only drew, pages upon pages, temples swallowed by trees, faces too old for time, and always that one word, return. That relic, now held in a government vault under Delhi, has yet to be identified, made of no known metal. It hums faintly when touched, and the symbols on it, when shown to linguists and historians, resemble early Sumerian and Proto-Indus Valley characters, but none of them match exactly. It's as if they came before writing, before memory, and the island, North Sentinel, still sits there undisturbed. But every few months, satellites pick up heat signatures, symmetrical, rhythmic, not fires, not animals, and always in the same place, the glade circled in Harish's photo. There are no new expeditions. The Navy denies all allegations. The government discourages curiosity. The file exists black-stamped and redacted. At the top, in Harish Banerjee's final handwriting, is a single word, return. They called him John Allen Chow, young, driven by something deeper than faith, armed only with a Bible, notebooks, and an unwavering certainty that he could reach the unreachable. In 2018, he stepped onto forbidden shores of North Sentinel Island. He never stepped back. Witnesses from a nearby fishing boat watched from a cautious distance. They saw figures emerge from the jungle, bare-chested, painted in ash and charcoal, holding bows that hummed with ancient precision. John raised a hand. Perhaps he smiled, perhaps he prayed, and then they fired. The arrow struck before the sea had time to carry his voice away. His body fell into the surf, dragged ashore, and was never seen again. The Indian government did not retrieve the corpse. No attempt was made. No charges were filed. No investigation was launched. The message was clear. Some places are not meant to be reached. But John Chow was not the first. Long before him, long before India existed as a nation, the island had earned its silence. In colonial records, it was referred to as the land that speaks in violence. Early British naval maps marked it only with a red X and the word hostile. Not hostile in war, hostile in existence. Between 1791 and 1901, 6 expeditions attempted contact. 6 failed. Ships were lost. Crews went missing. Some men returned, sunburned, broken, raving about dark children with no eyes and a jungle that hums. Their accounts were buried, dismissed as tropical fever, but archived nonetheless. In a dusty back room of the Indian Naval Archives in Visakhapatnam, behind shelves of forgotten files and fading photographs, lies a box labeled Operation Candlelight. No official record of it exists. No date, no signatures. Just a lock that has not been opened since 1954. Except once. It was a rainy December in 1998 when a junior intelligence officer named Praveen Nath cracked open a file by accident. He'd been searching for outdated shipping logs and instead uncovered nightmares. Inside were reports handwritten in black ink, their pages stiff with time. Each marked classified, level 5. They spoke of an expedition sent by the British East India Company in 1851, codenamed Candlelight, allegedly in pursuit of rare tropical resources. But the real reason lay deeper. A mysterious carving found in Burma had matched a strange glyph etched into a boulder on North Sentinel Island's reef. The glyph appeared to predate written language. It resembled an eye surrounded by 7 points, almost like a starburst. The natives of Burma called the Sleeping One. In some old texts, it was referred to as the mark of the first shadow. What struck Praveen was the exact replication of this symbol, down to the angular imperfections. Found not just in the Indian Ocean, but in an ancient Mesopotamian tablet unearthed in Iraq in 1932. How had the same symbol appeared across oceans, across millennia? He sent a copy to his supervisor. The next morning, the file was gone, his clearance revoked. Praveen disappeared 3 weeks later during a vacation in Assam. His body was never found, only a satchel, and inside, a piece of driftwood with the same carved eye. It was not an isolated coincidence. In 2004, a tsunami struck the Andaman Islands. The devastation was vast. Aid poured in from all over the world. Satellite images flooded intelligence centers. Most showed destruction, but one showed something strange. Inland, deep within the forested heart of North Sentinel, a clearing had formed, a shape too geometric for nature, a circle, perfect, wide, unnaturally clean. No one could explain it, and no one tried. The island was once again deemed untouchable, this time by global consensus. In an unprecedented decision, the United Nations declared the Sentinelese territory Sacred Human Protection Zone 0. Any form of contact, civilian or military, would be considered a breach of international law. The world had, for once, agreed on silence, but silence in itself is a story. A former linguist of the Indian Institute of Cultural Memory, Professor Leela Sinha, became obsessed with the island in her later years. She believed language itself was born from pain, that every dialect carried within it echoes of some trauma long buried. She studied languages no longer spoken, dead tongues from Samaria, Akkad, Harappa, even forgotten tribal phonetics from the hills of Nagaland. In her old journals, one phrase appeared repeatedly, often without translation: Adar Menenkal. The phrase appeared in ancient Tamil as well, always paired with stories of vanished villages and glowing forests. She believed it was a reference to a time when skywalkers roamed the earth and the roots of heaven still touched soil. When asked about the Sentinelese, she said only this: they do not speak. They remember. That is worse. She died in 2009. In her will, she left behind a sealed envelope labeled "Only open if they return." Inside was a single parchment drawn in her own hand of the seven-pointed eye and a line written in Proto-Elamite. This place predates man's dominion over earth. Let us pause there. What does it mean, predate man's dominion? Not just older than civilization, older than the right to rule. It suggests something was once here, or perhaps still is, that ruled not by kingship or science, but by presence alone. A consciousness older than thought, older than breath. Perhaps that is what the Sentinelese protect. Not a culture, not even a people, but a secret buried in the skin of the earth. A wound that never healed. In 2020, a leaked document from a European Black Ops division known only as Section 7 surfaced briefly on an encrypted forum. It detailed Area 51 analogs, places around the world known to governments but kept out of public discourse due to ontological risks. North Sentinel Island was listed. Beside it, active, observed, unbreachable, symbolic anomaly consistent with pre-human worship systems. Probability of cross-temporal phenomenon, 71%. The document vanished in minutes. The users who reposted it disappeared from the forum entirely. Some say the island hums at night, that passing ships hear singing in a language without vowels, that lights flicker beneath the waves, too deep for torches and too erratic for storms. Some say the island isn't just avoiding us, it's waiting, not for a visitor, but for a time when the world forgets enough that the gate might be open again. There's a story from the 1800s, buried in a missionary's journal, about a man who tried to live there, not John Chow, but an Irish trader named Callum Fenn. He believed he could teach the Sentinelese agriculture and peace. He built a canoe, took tools and seeds, and sailed alone. No one saw him again, but decades later, a group of fishermen found a box sealed in wax floating in the current. Inside was a journal, water damaged, half illegible. But on the last page, just before the ink ran out, was a single entry. They are not savages. They are sentinels, not of land, of what sleeps beneath it. I saw it, not a god, not a beast, a hunger, eyes like mirrors. If I am to live, I must forget what I saw. I must become one of them. The entry ends there. The handwriting below it is different, cruder, slanted, and in an unknown alphabet. But the last line, translated phonetically, sounds eerily close to what Professor Lila once wrote, Adhar Menenkal. Even today, the waters around North Sentinel are patrolled, not by local coast guards, but by vessels marked only by numbers unregistered in any maritime database. Fishermen tell stories of losing time, of compasses that spin and watches that tick backward. One man claims he saw a column of fire rise from the jungle after a lightning strike. Silent fire, blue and white, vanishing in the span of a heartbeat. He was later found on his boat, drifting, eyes open and silent. He had bitten off his own tongue. You ask why governments banned this island? Why not research, explore, document? Perhaps it is because they already have, and what they found made them choose silence. But we are not good at obeying silence, are we? There will be others. Dreamers, intruders, believers, skeptics. They will come, and the island will watch. And one day, perhaps it will speak again. And when it does, it may not be in words. It may not be in any language we understand. Only a sound deep and old, like the cracking of stone beneath the weight of time. Or a word that predates all others. A word like return. There are stories that drift quietly, barely touching the world, like whispers lost in wind. And then there are the stories that scream, not with sound but with silence, so loud it splits history in two. The tale of Dr. Anika Bowes was one of those stories. She was not famous, not in the way that garners awards or headlines, but in the quiet corridors of anthropology. Her name held weight, a scholar with a heart that beat for lost cultures and forgotten voices. She believed every people, every tribe, every dialect had something to teach us, something we had forgotten. In 1991, Anika vanished. She had been part of a government-sanctioned observation program off the Andaman Islands. The official report said she drowned during a storm while anchored near North Sentinel. Her body was never recovered. No further inquiries were made. But her sister never accepted that. For 30 years, Mira Bowes kept a small photo of Anika on her bedroom shelf. Always dusted, never forgotten. In that photo, Anika smiled without hesitation, notebook in hand, eyes full of questions. And then one morning in 2022, Mira received a call from a fisherman in Tamil Nadu. He had found something, caught in his net like seaweed. It was a leather-bound journal, bloated with seawater, singed around the edges, smelling of salt and ash. The name inside was faded, but the imprint remained. Dr. A. Bowes. The diary was a mess. Pages torn, ink bled and smeared by decades adrift. But some entries were still legible. And what they revealed was not meant for the living. The first entry was dated August 14, 1991, 3 weeks before Nika's disappearance. They are not ghosts. They are not monsters. But they do not belong to time the way we do. They move like memory, not forward, not backward, just there. She had approached North Sentinel from a distance, with permission to observe but not engage. Binoculars, audio recorders, no contact. That was a rule. But rules bend in the hands of curiosity. On the third day, she claimed to see a figure on the shoreline. His skin was not black. It was gray, not like ash, but like bone dust. His eyes did not reflect sunlight. They swallowed it. And when he looked at me, I felt something move inside my head, like a dream not meant to be remembered. She began calling him the Man of Ash. Her colleagues dismissed it. Imagination, they said. Stress. Anika disagreed. She claimed he appeared every evening at the exact same place, never speaking, never gesturing, just watching, and then vanishing, as if folded back into trees. She sketched his face once. The drawing was crude, the paper torn but unmistakable, because that face, Mira later realized, was identical to the one captured in satellite footage by Harish Banerjee. The figure seen staring up at the sky in part 1. Anika saw him 30 years earlier. By September 1st, her entries grew erratic. The jungle speaks, but not in words. It speaks in color, in sound that exists below hearing. I hear it when I sleep. No, not sleep. Something between sleep and drowning. She described dreams filled with symbols she did not understand. Spirals that turned the wrong way. Trees that moved without wind. A language without time, where words were not said but remembered. They do not learn language. They are born knowing it. It is not passed down. It is passed inward. A memory, shared and unbroken. What kind of mind remembers from before its birth? Her writing grew jagged. Desperate, she spoke of losing sense of her own voice, of hearing thoughts that were not hers. One woman walked to the shore. I think she was a woman. Her skin was covered in carvings. Not painted, carved. Symbols. I recognized some. From cave walls in Borneo. From pottery shards in Mohenjo-Daro. How? She didn't speak. She just put her hand to her chest. And I understood, not in words, in feeling. The message was, do not ask who we are. Ask what we are protecting. There were burns along the edge of this entry, as if it had been deliberately scorched. The following pages were soaked and brittle, but one remained intact, pressed between sheets of wax paper, as if purposefully preserved. It was not a written entry. It was a map of the island, or rather, beneath the island, a winding spiral, descending into what appeared to be chambers, layered like a beehive. At the center, a single symbol, the eye with 7 points, and beside it, a phrase written in a mix of Sanskrit, linear A, and something unidentifiable. Mira brought it to a team of linguists in Delhi. They deciphered what they could. It read, "This is not a place. This is a mind buried in soil." What does that mean? What kind of place functions as a mind? What kind of people are born already remembering? What if the island is not land, but memory? One final entry in the diary remained. It was written in shaking hands, the letters dark, almost etched into page. I tried to speak. I shouldn't have. They heard. They turned. Their eyes were not angry. They were disappointed, as if I had broken something sacred. The man of ash stood before me. He spoke a word I did not understand. And in that moment, I remembered something I have no right to remember. I remembered standing in a stone hall, older than time, fire floating in glass, a door not made but grown, and something behind it. I remembered being one of them, a long, long time ago, before names. The final line was scrawled like a cry, smeared with water, ink, and something darker. Don't speak to them. They remember what we forgot. The diary ended there. Mira never released it to press. She feared what it might stir, but she gave copies to researchers quietly, carefully. One of them was Dr. Ketan Rao, a semi-retired expert in proto-linguistics and mytho-cultural transfer. He wept when he read it, because he, too, had seen the symbol years ago on a fragment recovered from a collapsed crypt in southern Iran. A crypt sealed with clay that carbon dated back to 8000 BC. That symbol had not faded. It had been painted with blood. Still red. It matched Anika's drawing. Exactly. So what are they? These watchers of jungle. These beings who speak without words. Are they human? Once human? Or something left behind by whatever came before us? We think of history as a straight line, a path of light from fire to city to satellite. But what if it isn't a line? What if history is a loop? And in that loop, there are places that remember. Places where time collapses and memory is not something we carry, but something that carries us. Maybe the Sentinelese are not uncontacted. Maybe they contacted us long ago and then chose to forget, to seal away what they had known, to forget so they could live, so they could guard. Because to remember is to awaken something that should have stayed asleep. One final detail. When Mira held her sister's diary for the last time, something strange happened. The leather cover, though old and warped by sea, gave off a faint heat, not warm from the sun, heat from within. And when she looked at it in the dark, the symbol on the map, the eye with 7 points, glowed faintly. Not like phosphorus, not like ink. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Mira lives alone now. She no longer grants interviews. Her phone is disconnected. But sometimes she writes anonymous letters to mythological forums under the name Remember 1991. In one of them, she wrote, "There are places in the world where history folded in on itself, where time buried not just bones, but warnings. North Sentinel Island is one of them." We ask what they know, but the real danger lies in what they never forgot. They walk among roots that were once veins. They speak to trees that once heard the stars. And when they look at you, it is not you they see. It is all the versions of you that could have been and the one you should never become. Do not try to speak to them, because they remember what we forgot. Science, for all its precision, is still haunted by the unknown. It may wear lab coats and speak in decimals, but underneath the numbers and formulas lies a deep, trembling curiosity, the kind that reaches back into ancient waters, searching not for answers, but for origin. That's how Project Euchre began. Not in university or state lab, but in a weathered, windowless biotech facility in Phuket, Thailand. Officially, the company was called Anodyne Cellular Research, but no government registry could confirm its funding. It was rumored to be a ghost subsidiary, off the books, fed by black market investors chasing immortality. But the truth was far stranger. It began with water, a simple ocean sample, scooped from the bay that curls around North Sentinel Island like a sleeping serpent. A routine collection by a third-party oceanographer. Nothing unusual until the DNA showed up. Dr. Saul Verma had seen his share of cellular anomalies. He'd studied jellyfish that never aged, worms that could regrow entire heads, and viruses that could hijack memory. But the DNA sample he received in February 2023 made his breath catch in his throat because it contained genetic markers that didn't belong. Not to fish, not to coral, not to any known marine species, and not to humans either. At first, Sahil thought it was contamination, a bad swab, a lab tech's fingerprint left in the sequence. But the anomaly was consistent. The markers repeated, aligned, branch grew. They resembled ancient eukaryotic strands, primitive and elegant, like the kind seen in extinct amphibians. But that wasn't the terrifying part. The terrifying part was that the genome wasn't just alive. It was active, not dormant, not degraded. It was replicating, forming sequences in the petri dish that didn't belong to any known blueprint of life. Sahil ran comparison tests against the International Genomic Database. No match. Then, out of a cautious instinct, he ran it against a fossil genome database, an archive of reconstructed DNA from extinct hominids, prehumans, and deep-sea protoorganisms. The match came from a fossil discovered in 1961, deep in the Afar Triangle of Ethiopia. Estimated age, 2.3 million years. The fossil had never been officially classified. Too incomplete, too strange. It bore traits of both Australopithecus and something unknown, and now its genome had reappeared. Not in the desert, not in ice, but in the warm, forbidden waters of North Sentinel. Project Eucra escalated overnight. Funding surged. Security tightened. The sample was declared exceptional biological risk. But internally, the scientists had begun calling it by another name, the sleeping code. Sahil noted that the DNA reacted to light. Exposure to low-frequency UV waves caused it to glow faintly, like bioluminescent algae. It pulsed when touched, and under high-powered microscopy, the sequences seemed to move, not drift, move, as if reading. Then came the dreams. Within 2 weeks, 3 researchers on the genome team reported recurring nightmares. Always the same, a jungle covered in mist, a voice humming just outside comprehension, and the feeling of being watched by something older than thought. Sahil tried to rationalize it. Shared suggestion, stress, exposure to unfiltered proteins. But deep down he knew something about the genome was affecting them, not biologically, cognitively. Late one night, Sahil isolated a particular strand of the genome and fed it into an AI simulation, hoping to visualize the hypothetical organism it might produce. A harmless model, just a formality. What emerged made him freeze. It was a humanoid, not entirely human. 7 feet tall, elongated limbs, skin the color of ash, black eyes, and on its chest, a pattern burned into the simulated flesh, an eye with 7 points. The same symbol found on Anika Bose's map, the same symbol buried in Mesopotamian clay, the same symbol etched into coral rock near North Sentinel's reef. How could the genome know? How could it carry memories? And then he realized it wasn't just a sequence of life. It was a story, written in blood. Sahil tried to alert the others, but that morning, the lab servers went dark. All external access was cut. The genome samples were seized. And Sahil, he vanished. His apartment was left untouched, his car still parked. But his laptop, the one that had run the simulation, was found in a burned-out Jeep on the outskirts of Chennai. The hard drive survived the fire. Inside was a single folder, untouched by the flames. Inside the folder, one simulation file, dated the night before. When opened, it played automatically a 3D reconstruction of the ancient humanoid, standing in a forest. Its skin flickered, changing with the light. Its mouth never moved, but the voice played anyway. Not in English, not in Hindi, not in any known tongue. But when run through a phonetic filter, it produced a phrase eerily close to one found in the diary of Dr. Anika Bose. Don't speak to them. They remember what we forgot. Some say Sahil fled the country. Others claim he was absorbed into a private government program. But one of his former assistants, who now lives off-grid in Sri Lanka, shared a final note Sahil sent him before disappearing. It read, "The genome is not from the past. It's from beneath the past. as if time didn't bury it, but grew around it. It didn't die. It waited. It remembers. And now it knows we're listening again. The water around North Sentinel is not ocean. It's a veil, and the DNA is its whisper. We should have never looked. So what is it? A forgotten species? A guardian? A remnant of a failed world? Or something else entirely? A mind wearing biology like a mask? What if the genome is not a being but a warning? A biological lighthouse from an age before man? Pulsing in the dark, blinking one message again and again. Do not return. The project was officially shut down. But rumors say the genome wasn't destroyed. They say it was taken to a remote facility in Alaska where the temperature could keep it dormant. But others say it was never just in the water, that it's still on the island, in the trees, in the air, in the breath of the silent people who guard the shore with arrow and fire. Maybe they don't hate us. Maybe they fear us because they know we are not ready, because they know what stirs beneath their soil still dreams of waking. And in its sleep, it calls, not loudly, but deeply, like a pulse, like a genome, like a memory pressing upward through flesh and water and time, waiting to be found. In the summer of 2003, under a moonless sky on the edge of the Andaman Sea, a ship left Port Blair without registration, flag, or official name. Its crew wore no insignias. Its destination was not logged, and its mission, if one were to name it, was whispered under one code name, Operation Veil. Only a handful of people knew it had ever happened, and fewer still remembered why. But buried deep in a forgotten subdirectory of India's Indo-Pacific Command mainframe is a corrupted file labeled OE V001, North Sentinel Decryption Partial. It contains fragments of mission logs, scrambled audio, and hand-scanned journal entries smuggled out by a technician who died of cardiac arrest 3 weeks after copying the file. What it reveals is something no Army manual ever prepared for. The operation was formed in response to an unusual event. A seismic pulse detected just offshore North Sentinel Island, too small to be an earthquake, too rhythmic to be natural. Instruments along the Bay of Bengal registered something impossible. A harmonic frequency emanating not from the Earth's crust, but from the island itself. And then there were the dreams. Navy officers stationed nearby began reporting vivid, recurring nightmares. Drowning, being pulled beneath the sea by invisible hands. A jungle that breathed, eyes without pupils, voices without mouths. The same images, again and again. Psychological contagion. They called it mass suggestion. But higher command wasn't convinced. So they sent in a team, 16 soldiers, elite, multilingual, special forces trained in jungle warfare and psychological resistance. Their orders: no engagement, no disruption. Enter the island, locate the source of the seismic pattern, document, and extract. They were told they'd be gone 48 hours. Only one came back. Lieutenant Sean Merrill was 34 years old, decorated, and known for his calm under fire. His testimony, given under sedation days after extraction, is the only surviving account of what happened on North Sentinel during those 2 days. His words were transcribed manually by a doctor who later lost his hearing in both ears, cause unknown. Mara said the island was quiet when they landed. No arrows, no resistance, just mist, thicker than it should have been for the time of year. The team moved inward, guided by thermal drones, which began failing one by one as they approached the island's center. Compass readings reversed. GPS locked. They began marking trees to track their route. But by morning, the markings had vanished. The jungle had closed around them. One soldier, Corporal Nadim, was found miles from the camp, curled into fetal position, face streaked with tears, whispering, "It's not the land that watches, it's a ground that listens." He died within the hour. Internal bleeding, no external wounds. Another man, Rajan, screamed awake that night, said he dreamed of a temple beneath the sea, pulsing with light, and a figure standing at its door, made of bones and coral. It had no eyes, only empty sockets that bled light. By day 2, for soldiers were gone. No gunshots, no signs of struggle, They simply disappeared. The team tried to retreat, but the jungle would not let them. They walked in circles, heard each other's voices when no one was speaking, saw things that dissolved when blinked at, and the dreams, they didn't stop when they woke. They began living them. Mara stopped sleeping. He kept detailed notes in a soaked, torn field journal later recovered from his uniform. One entry reads, "I can't tell when I'm awake. Every tree looks like it's breathing. Every shadow leans forward like it's listening. I saw my mother this morning. She died 5 years ago. She was sitting beneath a tree, holding her hands over her ears. She whispered, 'It's thinking again.' On the third day, they reached a clearing. In the center, a massive stone formation, circular, embedded in the soil, covered in vines. It looked ancient, older than anything they had seen in the region. Carvings covered its face. Not language, symbols, 7-pointed stars, eyes, spirals twisting inward, and in the center, a hole, not a tunnel, not an opening, a hole as if something had been removed or had risen. That night, Mara finally broke. He said he woke to find the rest of the team kneeling around the stone, heads bowed, humming in unison. He tried to stop them, but when he touched one, their skin cracked like porcelain and fell apart into ash and moss. He ran until the trees bled, until his lungs gave out, until the jungle turned to fog. And then he woke up on a boat. No memory of leaving, only soaked in blood. None of it his. The official report stated the rest of the unit was lost to topographical anomalies and jungle hazards. But no recovery team was ever sent. Mara never returned to service. He checked himself into a clinic near Varanasi, where he now lives in a private room, mute by choice. He has not spoken since 2003, but he paints, over and over, with trembling hands. The same figure, a being made of bones and coral, 7 feet tall, hollow eyes, the man of ash, the same figure described by Anika Bose, the same face that Sahil's simulation generated, and now, drawn in dozens of styles by a man who no longer speaks. Each painting stored in the clinic's archives, mostly ignored. Until one night, during a power outage, an intern carrying a battery pack walked too close to one of Mara's oldest canvases, and the painting began to glow, faintly, but unmistakably. Where the bones met coral, the paint pulsed with blue-green light, identical to bioluminescent algae, except no such paint had ever been used. It reacted not to touch, not to heat, but to magnetism, as if some part of it remembered the field of the earth. Since then, researchers have quietly begun studying the other paintings. All of them react the same way, as if charged with memory. But memory of what? The Earth's magnetic field is not constant. It shifts, ages, like breath. And deep beneath the Indian Ocean lies a known magnetic anomaly, just offshore of North Sentinel Island, a blind spot, a pocket of silence, where compasses forget how to spin. Some believe Mara saw something beyond biology, beyond time, not a creature, not a god, but an idea so old, so elemental, that it had worn forms like clothing over millennia, an entity rooted in the sea, the soil, the magnetic skeleton of the planet, a sentient pattern, half dormant, half dreaming, a being that does not wake like we do with eyes and breath, but wakes through mind, through echo, through memory. And what if the soldiers were not killed, but absorbed, unwritten, unmade, folded back into a story too old to hold human names? Today, Operation Veil remains sealed. There are no plaques of the men who vanished, no records, no medals, only one painting, locked in a vault under heavy guard, an image that glows faintly when the moon is new. Some say the figure in the painting is not static, that its head turns slowly over the years, always facing the painting's observer, always looking back. And now, the mission's code has leaked, not by intent, but by mistake, a misfiled metadata tag. A student doing a thesis on magnetic anomalies stumbled onto an old naval file labeled Operation Veil Observation Phase 2, scheduled for 2026. a new expedition, a second veil. Because despite the silence, despite the deaths, despite the dreams, someone still wants to know. Someone still wants to lift the veil. But some curtains were drawn not to hide things from us, but to protect us from what lies behind. The sea came in silence, and when it left, it took everything with it. On the morning of December 26, 2004, the waters around the Andaman Islands withdrew, like a breath held far too long. Birds vanished, the winds paused, and the sea itself, ancient and merciless, collapsed inward. The tsunami struck with no warning. Entire villages erased, islands reshaped, lives lost in an instant. But on North Sentinel Island, where no rescue helicopters flew and no media dared look, something else happened. The earth shifted, and the jungle gave up a secret. Weeks later, a surveillance drone scanning the coastline picked up something new. Not a change in terrain, but in texture. Where a dense canopy had once stood, there was now a swath of exposed earth, pale, stone-colored, and fractured. In the middle of it, half buried, was a face. A face too large, too perfectly symmetrical to be natural. The shape was unmistakable. Not a boulder, not erosion. A carved stone head, tilted upward, mouth open in silence. Its features were not tribal, not human. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were hollow circles, angled strangely, as though sculpted to watch the sky rather than the land. The head alone measured nearly 4 meters tall. How much lay beneath, no one knew, but the Sentinelese had already surrounded it. In satellite images, they stood around the head, not in violence, but reverence. Some knelt, others danced. Smoke rose in spirals from small fires, as if the ritual had already begun. They weren't afraid. They were welcoming it back. Local fishermen on nearby islands, some of the few with knowledge passed down through oral lore, recognized the shape at once. They called it Alkakalthan, the sky buried, a god that, according to legend, fell from the stars in the age before the moon rose. A thing not born of this world, but one that entered it, violently, like fire through glass. They said it was swallowed by the jungle to keep it quiet, because when it breathes, the ocean changes. And when it speaks, the mind breaks. Governments dismiss the reports. They had to. North Sentinel was forbidden, sacred, legally off limits, but not to everyone. In early 2005, a private oceanographic vessel, chartered by a research group known only as Lamina Corp, arrived under the guise of coral reef documentation. But their equipment was not designed for marine biology. It was tuned to frequencies, and what they found buried near the newly uncovered structure was not coral. It was resonance, infrasound, vibrations too low for human hearing, but deeply felt in the body, pulsed faintly from the stone head, constant, deliberate, not natural. It registered at exactly 17.24 hertz, a frequency known in neurological studies to cause unease, dread, and hallucinations in humans. One diver, tasked with placing sensors near the base of the structure, surfaced mid-mission, his face pale, his limbs shaking. He claimed to hear a song coming from inside the rock, a chorus, voices layered upon voices, but not in a language, in emotion. He wept as he tried to explain. He said it was like hearing every grief he'd ever felt, all at once. The stone was magnetic, not in theory, in practice. Compasses spun within meters of it. Birds refused to land. Metal corroded in hours. And when a magnetometer was lowered nearby, it surged unexpectedly, measuring pulses that mimicked heartbeat rhythms. A heartbeat, in stone. And then came the twist no one could explain. One of the team uploaded the sound frequencies recorded near the head to a research colleague at a glacial study base in Antarctica. Within minutes, the reply came. We've heard this before. Buried beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, nearly 2 kilometers down, geologists had once recorded unexplained infrasound waves. They were attributed to tectonic movement at the time, but the wave patterns match exactly. The same rhythm, the same unnatural pauses. As if the sound was not mechanical, but living. Something was speaking, slowly, across oceans, through the bones of the earth. and both ends of the message were now waking up. The head was not carved in human style. Its eyes were too wide, its lips too thin. No tool marks were visible. In fact, the material of the stone didn't match any geological source found on North Sentinel or anywhere in the Andaman Basin. Geologists, forced to keep their findings private, were unanimous in one conclusion: it was not from this region, and possibly not from this world. But the Sentinelese already knew that. A linguist analyzing drone footage noticed a strange detail. Their dance around the head followed a very specific pattern. Not a tribal improvisation, but of geometric precision. Every movement aligned with stellar positions from 13,000 years ago. They were performing a memory, not just of story, but of time. They weren't welcoming the head. They were reawakening it. And here, the line between science and belief began to dissolve. Because when the statue was left undisturbed for several days, the sound grew stronger. Nearby ocean tides shifted subtly. Migratory birds altered their paths. People on distant shores began dreaming of faces made of stone, of corridors beneath the sea, of light that bent in unnatural ways. And at the heart of each dream, a voice saying one word: remember. One researcher, a woman named Dr. Farzana Mystery, developed seizures after prolonged exposure to the infrasound recordings. During one of them, she wrote on the walls of her lab in charcoal, "It is not dead. It is dreaming in slow thought. It does not want to wake, but it must. We are the dreamers who forgot we were once part of the body." She was later institutionalized. She has not spoken since, but every week she draws the same image: a statue rising out of the sea, its eyes open, bleeding light. They tried to bury the statue again, to cover it with sand, stone, anything. But the next morning, it would always be uncovered, not by human hands, by earth movement. Like the land itself refused to let it sleep, a team proposed cutting into the structure to measure density. But when they brought the equipment within 30 meters, it stopped working. The metal blades bent, the sensors cracked, the sound grew louder, a low, mournful hum, like the sea trying to speak through teeth. And then one researcher collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. He said the statue had spoken to him, not in words, but in memory. A memory not his own, a memory of falling, from a height not of air, but reality itself. He described a crash, not of metal or stone, but of mind, a collision between two consciousnesses, one primitive, one infinite. He said the statue wasn't just a monument, it was a tomb. So what lies beneath? What does the head belong to? Is it the tip of something larger? A buried body? A being trapped beneath soil and silence? Or is the statue itself alive? A vessel of old thought, an antenna of dreaming intelligence that reaches not up, but downward through stone and water, searching for itself across time. And what of Antarctica? Why do the same frequencies echo from both poles of the earth? Some speculate the two are connected, like lungs breathing through separate mouths. That what fell in the Andaman was only half of something older, something global, something seated in the crust when the continents were still fire. And if it speaks and pulses, perhaps it waits for an answer. Perhaps the Sentinelese are not protecting the statue. Perhaps they're keeping it company, helping it remember itself, because it, too, forgets until disturbed. Now, in 2025, the head is still there, unstudied, unclaimed, but not untouched. Some say the ocean around it feels different, warmer. Others claim to hear songs beneath the waves. Not human, not animal, just tone, and always the feeling that the sound isn't meant to be heard with ears, but with memory. It began with a dream, not a common one, not the kind lost in morning light or blurred by the fog of waking. This dream was sharp, unnaturally clear, like a memory that had never belonged to the dreamer. And it wasn't isolated. It began in Tokyo, then reappeared in Rome, then again in a monastery in Bhutan. Soon, from Prague to Cairo to Reykjavik, hundreds of people began reporting the same vision: a jungle, breathing, not swaying, not moving in the wind, breathing, as though the forest had lungs hidden in its roots and its canopy exhaled in silence. They all described the same sensation, a pressure in the chest, a sound below hearing, and always, at the center of the jungle, a woman standing in the mist, pale skin, black eyes, not dark, truly black, like open doors into night. And she would say the same thing every time. "You are not supposed to be here." Then the dreamer would wake, crying, shaking, changed. Among the first to notice the pattern was Dr. Eleanor Voss, a cognitive psychologist at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. She specialized in collective dreaming and cultural subconscious patterns. Her research dealt with archetypes, ancient forms of symbols and shared images that passed through generations like rivers under language. But this was different, because these dreams weren't metaphors. They were maps. Dozens of patients drew the same symbols, spoke of the same jungle, and described in eerily similar detail an island ringed by light and shadow, and a great stone head buried beneath the earth. An island that didn't show on most maps. An island they'd never heard of, but whispered in sleep as if it were home. North Sentinel. Religious figures noticed it too. In a monastery carved into Himalayan rock, a monk named Tenzin began writing during his sleep. Ancient Sanskrit phrases, ones he did not speak or read while awake, repeated on parchment. The gate lies beneath roots. The breath of the earth dreams in silence. She watches the ones who forgot the vow. Meanwhile, at a dream research lab in California, neurologist Dr. Isaac Ryder conducted a test. He placed a patient known for vivid dreams into a deep REM cycle while monitoring brain activity. The patient had described the jungle vision the night before and volunteered for deeper observation. 30 minutes into sleep, the monitor spiked. Not just normal activity, but total neural activation. Every region of the brain, visual, auditory, memory, fear, language, all lit up as though the man was fully conscious in multiple realities at once. He began muttering in an unknown dialect, and then he stopped breathing. When revived, he gasped and cried out a single word, "Sentinel." Then he passed out. Isaac Ryder became obsessed. He believed the dreams weren't individual episodes, but transmission, a signal, something that moved through the subconscious like sonar through water, and he believed he could map it. He gathered participants across 3 continents. Volunteers who had experienced the dream were placed under synchronized monitoring. Electrodes tracked their brainwaves. Audio recorded their breathing. Thermal scans watched their temperature shift. And every single subject, within 6 minutes of entering REM sleep, began murmuring the same sound. Other men in call, return. Some would cry in their sleep. Others laughed as if visited by something familiar and terrifying. One woman, a child psychologist, awoke with her palms covered in a rash. When the blisters healed, they left behind 7 symmetrical scars, like points of a star, like the symbol carved in stone. Isaac Ryder pushed further. He created a program, DreamApp, that tried to visualize the dreams based on EEG data. When rendered, the model showed something impossible, a vast neural landscape, and in its center, a pulse, rhythmic, slow, like a living heartbeat echoing in the deep. The coordinates generated by the neural pulse pointed to a spot in the Bay of Bengal, exactly over North Sentinel Island. The dreams intensified, not just among the test subjects, among the researchers, among monks, among children. And in each case, the woman appeared. She never aged, never moved, just stood in the breathing jungle with her black eyes open, as if remembering something terrible. She would raise her hand, point at the dreamer, and say, "You are not supposed to be here," then vanish. Isaac Ryder decided to test it himself. He entered the sleep chamber, electrodes in place, camera on. He took a sedative, slipped into darkness. 10 minutes later, his eyes moved violently beneath his lids. The machines roared. His brain was alive, not like dreaming, but thinking with the force of full consciousness. Then something happened, something no one expected. His brain flatlined. The EEG went dead. No activity, no heartbeat, no breathing. The team rushed in, declared him clinically dead, but the imaging machine still showed something. A faint glow in the brain, not electrical, not biological, magnetic. Then, 37 seconds after death, his heart started beating again. He gasped awake, looked at the ceiling. Tears ran down his face. He whispered, "Sentinel," and died, this time for good. His final brain recording showed a visual burst unlike anything previously recorded in science. A flash of shapes, spirals, stone, a woman's face, and a city made of tree roots and coral, spinning inward like a whirlpool of memory. He had gone somewhere, and brought back only a name. Isaac's laptop was seized by an unnamed agency. The files were copied, locked away, but a single document was leaked by a former assistant. It was titled, "The Mind That Sleeps Beneath." Inside were Isaac's notes, handwritten, feverish. One line repeated, "The jungle is not alive. It is a mind, a storage, a network of memory encoded in time. We are not dreaming about it. It is dreaming through us. And she is the gatekeeper of that memory. We are not supposed to be here." Religious scholars compare the woman to ancient myths, Kali, Persephone, Ereshkigal, goddesses of memory, death, and sleep. But she is none of them. She has no name, only presence, a face with eyes that do not reflect, but absorb, not evil, not angry, just disappointed, like a parent watching a child forget something sacred. Around the world, the dreamers continue. They don't know each other. They speak different languages, but they all say the same thing. She asked us to remember. She showed us the gate. She told us the mind was not dead, just resting, and that it was time to wake up. So what is the mind? What does it want? Some say it's a memory of Earth itself, a sentient echo of every life that has touched the soil. Others say it's a remnant of something before life, embedded in stone, coral, tree root, and water. Try and complete a thought left unfinished millions of years ago. And now, humanity has grown loud enough for it to listen again, and perhaps to speak. Through dreams, through symbols, through one phrase whispered across time. Sentinel, not as a name, but as a warning. On a quiet morning in March 2025, a group of fishermen just north of Nepali, a sleepy coastal village in western Myanmar, saw something unusual drifting in the surf. At first, they thought it was driftwood tangled in seaweed, but then it moved. What they pulled from the water was not wood. It was a woman, naked, covered in scratches, breathing, but only barely. Her eyes were shut tight, her skin pale and slick with salt. Her hair was thick with sand and tangled with tiny shells. When they carried her to shore, she didn't scream or cry or shiver. She just opened her eyes, and the men recoiled because her eyes were black, entirely black, like the woman from the dreams. She didn't speak. She didn't run. She stared at the horizon like she had forgotten how to blink, and then as the sun set, her body began to glow under ultraviolet light at the local clinic. Her blood shimmered, not like a trick of light, but bioluminescence. Cells in her veins emitted a faint bluish-green glow, similar to deep-sea organisms that never see the surface. And more troubling, her red blood cells contained structures that didn't match human physiology, structures that resembled a genome fragment once found near North Sentinel Island, the forbidden sequence that mimicked prehistoric life. The hospital called the capital called the military. The woman was taken, gently but without option, to a research facility near Yangon. For 9 days, she said nothing. They fed her. She ate slowly, chewing each bite like someone trying to remember what food was. She never slept, not once. Her heartbeat never changed. Her temperature held steady at 33 degrees Celsius, far lower than a human should survive with. The scientists tried every language they had access to: Burmese, Hindi, English, Tamil, Latin. She listened, but said nothing, until a visiting linguist, Professor Helena Dramas, arrived from Athens. When she entered the observation chamber, the woman turned toward her, not with interest, but recognition, as if she remembered Helena from a place that had no time. Helena didn't speak to her at first. She sang, "An old man knowing him," a reconstructed chant from the ruins of Knossos, thought to be 3,500 years old. The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she spoke. It was not Greek, not modern, not ancient. It was a language lost to time, the uncracked puzzle linear A, the forgotten script of Minoan Crete. No one had spoken it aloud in thousands of years, yet the woman whispered fluently. Helena wept. She translated slowly, painstakingly. The woman spoke in fragments, images, emotions turned into sounds. And always, she returned to one phrase. City beneath, lights below, you must not knock, you must not wake. Helena asked her name. She said, I was called Thelia, but that was before the forgetting. Where had she come from? She pointed west, out to sea, past the islands, past the reef. From the cradle, she said, from the gate where the breath sleeps. The scientists thought she was delirious, but Helena wasn't convinced. She gave Thelia paper, a pen, and what the woman drew shook every person in that facility. She drew a city, not a village, not ruins, but a vast underwater structure, circular and symmetrical, filled with towers shaped like coral and bridges made of light. Symbols lined every wall, resembling the same seven-pointed eye seen in the satellite photos, the diary of Anika Bowes, and the painting from Operation Veil. But most disturbing was what stood at the city center, a massive, oblong spire, dark, hollow, pulsing like a heart, and beneath it, a pit lined with faces, all watching upward. She finished the drawing, handed it to Helena, and spoke one more sentence. We did not build it. We were called to it. The coordinates of the drawing were triangulated using known island positions and ocean trench data. And they pointed not to North Sentinel Island, but to a trench 12 kilometers offshore, one of the deepest unexplored zones in the eastern Indian Ocean, a place with no name, no surveys, no ships charted within 20 miles. But the bathymetry map showed something strange, a perfect circle in the trench floor, too smooth to be natural, a crater or a hatch. They scanned the woman's blood again, this time using high-sensitivity resonance imaging. Her DNA vibrated. It responded to magnetic fields. And when placed near recordings from the stone statue uncovered on North Sentinel, her cells lit up visibly inside her veins, as if the same frequency that called from the statue also lived inside her, as if she wasn't just a messenger, she was part of the signal. They tested her skin, her hair, her saliva. All samples contained biological markers similar to the forbidden genome sequence, the one found in the ocean near Sentinel, the one that dated back 2 million years. But Thelia was no ancient fossil. She was 27, a living, breathing woman who remembered before memory. She spoke of dreams made of water, of temples that floated between thought and stone, of a voice that lived beneath the ocean floor. She said it spoke not in sound, but in loss. Then one night, she vanished. No broken glass, no breach security. Just gone, her room empty, except for the drawing left on her bed and on the wall, written in a dark, iridescent stain. The gate stirs. Divers were sent to the trench she had marked. 3 went down. Only 1 came back. He did not speak. He did not eat. He did not blink for hours. But he wrote, not in Burmese, not in English, but in the same language Thelia had spoken, and the words he wrote matched a line once carved on a cave wall in the ruins of Knossos. They sank the city to bury its thought. But thought is a tide, and tides return. Today, the trench remains unvisited. Its coordinates are redacted in every open oceanic database, but sonar scans still ping from its edge, and every scan returns the same pattern. A pulse, slow, rhythmic, measured, not seismic, not animal, but intentional. A sleeping frequency, a forgotten city, a gate waiting beneath pressure and silence, and a woman who came back not to warn us, but to remind us. The trench had no name. Even among oceanographers and deep-sea navigators, it was referred to only by coordinates, a stretch of impossible blackness 12 kilometers west of North Sentinel Island. a place where depth monitors often failed, where compasses spun and sound refused to echo. For decades, it remained undisturbed, unmapped, avoided not by regulation, but by instinct, a blank spot on the map that seafarers passed in silence until the woman appeared. Delia, she had drawn a map to it, with hands that glowed under ultraviolet light and a mind full of languages no living person should remember. She spoke of a city that sank not by accident, but by choice to bury thought itself. And now, that city was stirring. In early 2026, a deep-sea exploration company, ostensibly hired for seismic mapping, launched a submersible drone named Athena 9 into the trench. Unmanned, untethered, built for silence. Its job was simple: descend, send data, return. That's not what happened. The descent began smoothly. The trench floor, previously thought to be barren sediment, revealed strange formations, sharp ridges, smooth curves, and structures that reflected sonar as if they were hollow. Athena 9 moved slowly, its light sweeping left and right. At 5,000 meters, visibility dropped to near zero. Then at 5,920 meters, the seabed changed. A flat plain, perfectly smooth, but not natural. The surface wasn't mud or rock. It was fused stone, etched with symmetrical grooves and symbols only visible under infrared. Symbols shaped like spirals, eyes and starbursts, seven-pointed, like the eye that haunted every stage of this unfolding mystery. At the center of the plain was a temple, if one could still call it that, crusted in coral, half buried in shifting black sand. Its architecture matched no known civilization. It did not resemble Greek, Egyptian, Sumerian, nor any style rooted in terrestrial culture. Its lines were too fluid. Its walls curved inward, as if built not by hands, but grown by intention, like thought solidified. And just beyond its central archway was an opening, a slit, wide, dark, like a sleeping eye. Athena 9 approached the structure. Its sensors flickered. Inside the slit, faint bioluminescent streaks glowed, a pattern not random, but rhythmic, like coded language. Then, without warning, the drone's lights caught movement, not a creature, a reflection, a surface opening. And in the camera's center frame, something turned. An eye, massive, glowing faint gold, then green, then blue, layers of light swimming within the iris like galaxies in water. It didn't blink. It simply opened and looked, not at the drone, but through it. The command room on the surface fell silent. Athena 9's video stream began showing interference. The light warped. Shadows formed where none should be. The image bent at the corners like the lens itself was remembering instead of recording. Then came the sound, not external, internal. A low hum picked up by the submersible's instruments. A resonance, similar to infrasound, like the pulse emitted by the statue on the island, but deeper, more layered. A song built on gravity. It moved through the drone's frame, through the water, through every sensor. And on the monitor, a new shape began to emerge. The city, not a ruin, not dead, but asleep. And now it shifted. Stone began to slide beneath coral. Plates realigned. Walls unfolded like petals made of bone and crystal. Lights pulsed from crevices. Structures rose without displacing sediment, as if they had always been there, waiting for the right frequency to remember themselves. The city wasn't buried. It was locked, and Athena 9 had knocked. Sonar pinged again, and this time something responded, a return signal, but not an echo, a new pulse, a deliberate message. When analyzed, the signal was almost too perfect, as though not natural, but composed. It mirrored waveforms found in certain ancient Greek funeral hymns. And at its climax, the frequency spiked, not in violence, but as if something was waking up or turning over, as if consciousness stirred beneath the seabed. Athena 9's feed sharpened. In the frame, a second eye opening, and then a third, not two, not a face, but a circle of eyes surrounding a pillar of darkness. An organism, a temple, a mind. Then came the whisper. The command team on the surface didn't hear it with ears. It came through the speakers, over the water, under the signal. Not sound, but language. Oh, familiar and chilling. He waits. Spoken in perfect ancient Greek. Then the feed cut. The screens went black. Not static, not lost signal. Black, as if the data wasn't corrupted, but erased. The only image that remained was the last still frame recorded by Athena 9, a glowing eye half open, surrounded by carvings of spirals and starbursts. The image burned itself into the minds of everyone in the room. One technician collapsed. Another wept uncontrollably. A third never returned to the sea again. So what lies beneath? A city? A prison? A being? Is the trench a tomb? Or a womb? Something that holds not a body, but a thought unfinished? What if the city wasn't built for living, but for remembering? Not memories of people, but of existence itself. Thelia said it first. We did not build it. We were called to it. And now, whatever sleeps in that trench has opened its eye, and it is calling back. The ocean returns everything, eventually. In July of 2026, the Andaman Sea was unusually quiet. The monsoon winds had fallen still. No storms churned. The sea lay glass flat, holding its secrets just beneath the surface. And then the bodies came. They weren't whole, not at first. Bits of bone, pieces of rib cages, teeth, some tangled in seaweed. Others drifting just below the tide line near Wandower Beach. Most were assumed to be ancient, long-lost remains dislodged by underwater tremors, maybe remnants of colonial shipwrecks, until one skeleton washed up fully intact. The jaw was sharp, the limbs long, the skull too smooth. Local authorities collected it quietly. No press, no public report. But behind closed doors, something impossible was discovered. The body wasn't ancient. It was fresh. No flesh remained, but the bone was new, less than a year old. Then came the match. Dental records confirmed it beyond question. This was Dr. Pearl's son, a researcher who had vanished in 1991 during a classified observation near North Sentinel Island. She had been missing for 35 years, and yet her bones were younger than her disappearance. 2 more skeletons followed, one male, one female, both confirmed as part of the 1991 missing research team. But none of it made sense. Their DNA matched, their dental records were precise, but their skeletons had changed. The teeth were filed, not naturally worn down, but carved deliberately into triangular points. Predatory, ritualistic. The eye sockets were larger than expected, subtly extended, as if to make room for different muscles. The hands showed abnormal finger length and additional cartilage. These were not merely dead bodies. They were transformed. A quiet investigation began under the Indian Ministry of Oceanic Affairs. Top-level security, private labs, and that's when the 4th skeleton arrived. This one was different, because in its left hand, tightly clutched by tendon and sealed in hardened wax, was an object no ocean could corrode. A modern camera, shockproof, salt-proof, enclosed like it had been buried on purpose. Inside, a full data card, intact, and when decrypted, the photos showed a world no one had seen or dared to remember since the early 1990s. The images began innocently. Grainy photos of jungle canopy, boats on the horizon, the back of a researcher's head, then the shoreline, dark figures watching from the trees, and one image that halted every breath in the room. A temple, half submerged, spiral with coral, and in its center, a stone altar slick with water etched with the 7-pointed eye. In front of the altar stood the missing team, alive, but not alone, because beside them stood others taller than the Sentinelese, leaner, their eyes black, their skin covered in smooth geometric tattoos. And the final photo, time-stamped a full 6 months after the team had been declared missing, showed Dr. Pearl's son, standing at the edge of the jungle. Her eyes were black, and she was smiling. So what happened? How do people vanish for decades and return with bones that don't belong to the species they left as? Theories surfaced. They weren't killed. They weren't drowned. They were altered, not forcibly, not violently, but willingly, as if they had been rewritten from the inside out. One biologist suggested the trench held not just a city, but a memory engine, an ancient biological intelligence capable of transmitting itself through proximity, like a virus that didn't harm, but evolved the host, a software update for the human mind, a rewriting of the code, over months, years, until the host was no longer human. Not fully, but something else, something designed to remember. They called it biosympathetic resonance, the idea that a human body could be tuned like an instrument, that certain frequencies, like the ones coming from Trench, could change protein behavior, rewrite DNA expression, and alter cognition. And those who stayed near the city too long adapted. More evidence surfaced. Tiny carvings discovered inside the rib bones, internal, hidden, scraped from the inside out, as if the body itself had begun recording knowledge. When analyzed, the markings resemble fragments of linear A, Sumerian cuneiform, and impossibly patterns seen on Martian meteorites. The symbols repeated a phrase: memory must walk. The dead are not dead. They carry the dream forward. The idea was no longer symbolic. It was literal. The researchers hadn't just been transformed. They had become vessels. Not zombies, not possessed, but chosen. Walking libraries of a thought so old, it needed living bodies to move through time. And the sea, the ancient sea that connects all shores, had become their road. The camera revealed one last message, a video clip, only 13 seconds long. Grainy, warped, a woman's face, pale, black eyes, the same woman who had returned from the sea months earlier, Delia, but this time she looked directly at the lens and whispered, "The city is not sleeping, it is remembering." So now the world waits. Somewhere in a cold lab, the bones of once human researchers are sealed in glass. They still shimmer faintly in low light. And some say, if you listen closely, you can hear the bones hum, not a vibration, a language, syllables older than fire, softer than death, calling the next dreamer home. Sometimes the most dangerous gates are not meant to keep others out, but to keep something in. By late 2026, too many pieces of the puzzle had surfaced. A forgotten city beneath the trench, skeletons that returned changed, dreamers linked by a single word whispered in sleep, and that eye, watching from the deep, no longer closed. But the final discovery came not from science, nor from government. It came from greed. A private syndicate, unregistered, unnamed, hired a covert team of elite salvagers, mercenaries with archaeology backgrounds, recruited under the pretense of recovering Cold War satellite wreckage. They were given only a single location, North Sentinel Island, and one phrase whispered by the handler before they departed: find the vault. They arrived by night, aboard a silent black vessel that never appeared on marine tracking systems. Equipped with deep dive gear, sonar drills, and AI mapping drones, they made landfall under the cover of a moonless sky. Their instructions were clear: avoid the surface, go beneath. The vault, according to their brief, was hidden inside the island, below the jungle, beneath the roots, past the limestone folds. A space sealed not by time, but by intent. It took 3 days to find it. The entrance was hidden at the base of a limestone cliff, half swallowed by vines and crumbling rock. What looked like a cave at first glance was not natural. It had been carved, perfectly, geometrically, the shape of a hexagon. The inside smoothed by hands or tools too precise for any known ancient culture. And at the threshold, obsidian, not scattered, not broken, a slab of obsidian, 2 meters high, fused across the passage like a door made of midnight. Even covered in moss, it gleamed. When touched, the surface pulsed, softly, like skin holding a heartbeat just below the surface. And then came the noise, faint, low, a kind of breathing, not theirs, not mechanical. From within, the team argued. Some wanted to leave, but they were professionals, paid to be unafraid. One by one, they drilled, The obsidian cracked, not like stone, but like glass that didn't want to remember how to shatter. Behind it, darkness, not empty, but filled with silence so deep it pressed against the chest, and the carvings began. The tunnel walls were covered in imagery, figures painted in rust-red ochre, thousands of years old, maybe more, and yet they hadn't faded. One image appeared again and again, a tribe surrounding a gate, not outside it, not keeping others away, but standing as sentries, facing inward, watching the gate as though guarding it not from intrusion, but eruption. In one mural, the tribe weeps. In another, they raise their arms to the sky. In a third, they are all lying face down, bones exposed, as something black with eyes like stars pours from the gate, swallowing them whole. At the far end of the tunnel, the passage opened into a chamber, cylindrical, wider than any natural formation should be, and at the center stood the vault. Not a door, a seal, 10 meters wide, carved from some green-black stone that shimmered like it was wet, etched with spirals, stars, and that same symbol, the seven-pointed eye. But this time it bled. Carved channels ran down the seal, like veins, as if something inside pulsed, beating slowly against the stone. Not metaphor, not allegory, movement. One of the mercenaries, a man known only as Damar, touched the seal with a gloved hand and staggered backward. He said it spoke, not in words, in memory. He saw jungles burning, oceans boiling, skies weeping ash. He saw a temple being buried not by men, but by thought itself, thought that chose a hide to save the world from remembering. He saw a being of light and bone, neither god nor beast, crawl into a vault and lie still. And then he heard it whisper, "Do not wake what was never meant to sleep." They tried to record the chamber. Every camera failed, but one salvager had a charcoal sketchbook. She drew what she saw, the vault, the markings, the seal. When she flipped back to a previous page, her hands trembled because the image she had just drawn now appeared, faintly, on older pages she hadn't touched in days, as if the memory of the vault was leaking backward, rewriting the past. The team tried to leave, but something had changed. The tunnel behind them felt longer, wetter, colder, and that sound, that breathing, had grown louder, not like a sleeper dreaming, but like something that had just begun to wake. On the climb out, they found a new carving, one that hadn't been there before, freshly cut into the stone in a language no one should know. 3 gates remain. One will fail. The 4th cannot hold. He remembers you. The mercenaries surfaced. No words were exchanged. The obsidian was resealed with makeshift explosives. The cliff was collapsed, and when they returned to the ship, only one member remained awake. The others, 6 men and women, slept with their eyes open, not blinking, just waiting. 3 days later, they vanished at sea. No trace. Only the sketchbook remained, found adrift in a sealed tube. Its final page, one never drawn by the artist, showed the vault again. But this time, the seal was cracked. And below it, in dark ink, "He is not a god. He is the memory of what comes after gods." Experts who reviewed the carvings were stunned, because identical symbols were found in the Amazon, inside a cave system never connected to any known migration route. And another copy, almost exact, had been found in Mongolia, in the Altai Mountains, inside a tomb that predated recorded burial customs by 10,000 years. Neither civilization had access to obsidian vault technology, and yet they had both drawn the same seal. So what lies behind it? What did they bury before language had names? Was it a creature, an intelligence, or a truth so unbearable that forgetting became the only way to survive? Some believe the vault isn't just a door. It's a memory cell, storing not an event, but an entire epic that never made it into our history. Because to write it down would be to bring it back, to share it, to invite it. And now, the seal is cracking. The dreams have returned. The bones have changed. And in labs, in temples, in sleep, they all hear the same thing. Breathing, not loud, not angry, but steady, like a tide turning in the dark. like the earth itself remembering a name it once tried to forget. The end began with a sentence, not spoken, not shouted, whispered in brittle ink, pressed between the last two pages of a journal once believed lost forever. The final pages of Dr. Anika Bose's diary. It had taken linguists, archaeologists, and historians 3 decades to decode the full manuscript. The ink had faded, the language had shifted, and some of the words simply didn't exist anymore. But when the last fragment was translated in the winter of 2026, it revealed a warning so ancient it felt like it had been carved into the bones of the planet itself. If he wakes, the sea shall boil and time shall burn. That single sentence changed everything, because it suggested that the being buried beneath North Sentinel Island, beneath the stone eye, beneath the vault, beneath the dreams, was not just ancient, it was older than memory, and it was never meant to wake. In the months that followed, governments pulled back their ships. Satellites were quietly redirected. No-fly zones were expanded. But the world knew. The story had spread far beyond classified channels. And every night, dreamers reported the same vision. The jungle, breathing, and the figure with black eyes who whispered, "You are not supposed to be here." But there was more. Anika's diary spoke not just of danger, but of design. The island wasn't chosen by chance. Its people weren't wild. They weren't isolated. They were installed. A living mechanism to guard the slumbering mind below. "They are not a tribe," she wrote. "They are a veil." And then came the final truth. They were once like us, but they listened too long. The signal changed them, and now they are part of him. The Sentinelese were not protecting themselves from the world. They were protecting the world from him, from the dreamer beneath the roots, from the thought that fell from the stars and curled into folds of the earth like a seed waiting for rain, from something that did not live the way we understand life, or die the way we understand death. And they had been doing it for thousands of years, through silence, through violence, through memory passed without words. They guarded the gate, not because they feared intrusion, but because they feared leakage. What if the mind beneath the island wasn't sleeping, but simply waiting for a mind like ours, curious, arrogant, to knock loud enough? And in 1991, we did. We sent researchers, then drones, then questions, and he heard. Anika's last pages were erratic, scratched in loops, phrases repeated over and over as if she were no longer writing, but recording something pouring into her mind from somewhere else. He thinks in centuries. He remembers the stars before they cooled. He dreamed the first fire. We are only a blink to him. He does not know we exist until we ask him to. And then came the final paragraph, scrawled at the bottom sideways, like she had run out of space or time or both. We did not discover the island. We were brought to it. And it is not an island. It is an anchor. Somewhere beneath North Sentinel lies the root of a mind too vast for form, a thought planted before time, a vault not made of stone, but of ritual, silence, and living sacrifice. And now we have cracked it, weeks after the diary was translated. The camera recovered from the floating skeleton, sealed in wax, hidden from light, was finally decrypted. Its files were corrupted, fractured, except one, a video, 24 seconds long. It plays in darkness. Rain pelts the lens. The jungle is loud, but the audio is clearer than expected. We hear footsteps, ragged breathing, and a man's voice, desperate, low. He says, "We stepped on the shore. We shouldn't have." Then silence, and a final image, a tree, towering, with roots that do not twist, but spiral down in exact geometric symmetry. And beneath it, a mound of black stone, pulsing. Then the screen cuts to black, and that's where it ends. No credits, no answers, only the sense that something ancient, buried in soil and time, has begun to turn over. And in the silence that follows, you hear it, not with ears, but deep in the part of your mind that still remembers stories older than language. You hear it, breathing. So now we ask, who is he? Not a god, not a devil, not a king, something else. A dream made of gravity and memory. wrapped in sleep, waiting for the world to speak his name too loudly. And perhaps we already have. The Sentinelese are not enemies. They are keepers. Willing or not, they are part of the seal. The moment they are removed or forgotten, the last gate begins to crack, and the breathing becomes clearer, the pulse steadier, the mind brighter, and we realize the vault wasn't just designed to hold him in. It was built to hold us out. For thousands of years, the earth carried the wound, and the island was a scab. But now we've picked at it, and something is bleeding. There are no final battles, no closing rituals, just a voice calling through time from beneath stone and silence, asking the simplest, most terrifying question: who knocked? And the only answer is, we did. The island sleeps again, but the silence feels thinner now, as if somewhere beneath rock and time, the dream has begun to stir once more. Perhaps this was never just a tale. Perhaps memory is older than we understand, etched into the bones of the earth, waiting to be remembered. There are still coordinates unexplored, still names lost to sand and sea, still echoes humming beneath vaults we were never meant to find. So if your thoughts still drift to that jungle that breathes, to the black-eyed woman who spoke without sound, to the stone vault carved by hands not born of man, then listen closely, because stories like this don't end. They wait, and when they call again, you want to be here when we answer. If this journey left you wondering, aching, remembering something you never lived, like share and leave your voice in the comments. Then subscribe and step with us beyond the maps, into the stories time tried to bury.